Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, founder and CEO at recruiting firm Riderflex. If you enjoyed today's guest interview, please give it a like and be sure to subscribe to the Riderflex podcast. And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Try the #1 marketing platform for small business. Everything you need from design to marketing to CRM. Learn more at marketing360.com. Marketing 360. Fuel your brand. Try the #1 marketing platform for small business. Everything you need from design to marketing to CRM. Learn more at marketing360.com. Marketing 360. Fuel your brand.
Joni Wolfswinkel on the Riderflex podcast. Hi, Joni. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I love your studio. You're all set up. Very cool.
Thank you.
Is that in your Houston office, or where is that?
It is in our Houston office. We have a little studio. We have obviously our podcast inside the Wolf's Den. So we record in here once a week. So I thought, hey, why not share this with you as well?
Oh, I love it. I wish all of our guests came set up like that with the lighting and the mic and everything. It's great. I love it.
Cool.
Did you put that? You got the little soundproof, or not soundproof, but whatever that is, the little things that help with the audio on the wall, and you got a cameraman in there too.
I do. And I was going to say, so my cameraman, he's actually in the background here, and he's the one that makes it happen every day. He's the one that kind of designed all this. So it wasn't me, it was him.
Love it. Okay, so for everybody listening to this episode, this is what you need to do. Set up your little studio in your office with great lighting, great sound. It just makes a huge difference, doesn't it? I mean,
it does.
It doesn't have to be like super perfect, but gosh, just the lighting and the audio is just, yeah. And yours looks great. So appreciate you being set up. I love that.
Thanks.
Inside the Wolf's Den. That's your own podcast, huh?
It is, yeah. So it's actually a podcast my husband and I have created, and it's about our entrepreneurial journey. So we have a lot of, entrepreneurs on our podcast. We obviously specialize in real estate, so a lot of real estate investors, and just try to provide as much value as we can to our listeners. Just like
I love it. I love it. By the way, for everybody that's listening here, you can go to YouTube, Inside the Wolf's Den. I'm assuming you're on Spotify and all the audio stuff too.
Yes, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, all of that.
Okay. And what are you doing? Like one episode a week, a day, a month? What's your rhythm?
So we do one a week. They drop every Wednesday. So yeah, check us out. We're pretty much on every major platform.
Every Wednesday. Okay, very good. And it's you and your husband, Sean. Okay, he's the good-looking guy on there. I was wondering who that was.
Yes, right. Yeah, that's my other half.
Okay. And then you guys have guests that you pipe in via video. Sometimes they're in person too, or no?
Sometimes they're in person. If they're in Houston, in the area, we'll have them come on in. Obviously, we like it when they come in, since COVID, we've had to do everything remotely. So it's cool, but it's nice to have somebody here every now and then in our office.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. It is nice to see people in person. Let me ask you, is it only entrepreneurs tied to real estate, or do you venture out a little bit?
So we venture out a little bit. So we talk a lot about motivation too. It just depends on what we're feeling that week. I just recently got done with the fitness competition. So I shared a little bit of my story with the fitness competition and what that all entailed, and how disciplined I had to be, all that good stuff. So it's a little bit for everybody, really.
Okay. What was the fitness competition? What'd you do?
So it was in September. So last year I actually had this goal where I wanted to be the fittest I've ever been, right? And so I was like, all right, well, I'm going to do this thing. Well, I have to change my eating habits, and I have to probably hire a trainer. And I was like, you know what, if I'm going to commit to this thing, I'm going to go ahead and commit to it. And I'm going to sign myself up for a fitness competition. Wow. So I signed myself up for a bikini competition that was done in September.
What?
It was totally amazing. I mean, it really showed how disciplined and focused I could be. It was great. It was great. I loved it. And my husband was he's like, I can't do this anymore, Joni. I can't have chicken, rice, and vegetables every single day. I can't do this anymore. But the experience was awesome. and it really showed like how disciplined I could be. So
I
it was
think when
awesome.
I think when you share stuff like that on your podcast, it's great. I think listeners love the personal touch. By the way, was Sean, is he working out every day too, or he's not
He
as
is now, yeah, he's working out every day. I mean, he's not as crazy as I am,
yeah,
obviously, but
yeah.
yeah, he's got his rhythm too. So I think that's part of it.
Well, there's pressure. Yeah, because now you're looking awesome, right? So he can't be like, okay, I'm just gonna sit around on the couch and eat chips and get fat,
Right.
because he's like,
Yeah, no, I push him. I'm like, hey, we got to get this done. 5 a.m. We got to get this done.
Very good. I want to ask you about your childhood and your parents and where you grew up. Give me some history. Yeah, talk to me a little bit.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I'm actually born in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Okay.
Had a little bit of a rough upbringing, I would say. So my mom, she was a single mom. You know, she raised my brother and I. And my father left when I was 2 years old. My mom basically said, "Hey, you're out." He was a heroin addict. And so she raised us on her own. And then later on in life, my brother ended up following the same footsteps as my father. And so it was tough. It was tough growing up, and I think at that point, probably about 11 or 12 years old, I was like, you know what, I can't do this. Like, I am not going to follow that same path as my brother and my father. And so I had this fear that I was almost, like under pressure that I was going to be like that. And so I just said, hey, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do anything I can to get out of this. So I think that drive in me started at about 11 or 12 years old. Got my first job at like 15 years old. I was working at Taco Bell, and my friends would come by and buy some burritos or whatever, and I would be working. And then about 19, when I went to college, I went to the University of New Mexico. And at the time, I was actually going into nursing school, and I hated it, absolutely hated it. And at that time, I said, you know what? I saw a late night infomercial. It was a real estate infomercial, right? And it was Russ Whitney at the time. And they were showing us how you can make money flipping houses, all that good stuff. I was like, you know what? This sounds pretty cool. I think that, let's go check it out. So my fiance at the time, where he's my husband now, we went to this 3-day boot camp, and we're like, yeah, I think we can do this. So 19 years old, we're buying our first real estate property, right?
Wow.
And then I was like, school was like, I'm done with school. Like, I can do this full time. So I ended up getting my broker's.
Was it a residential or commercial property? The first
It
one?
was a residential property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So, so I would, and I still stuck with school for a little bit. I would go and check our job sites and then go to school in the afternoon.
I see.
But it just was not the typical college experience.
What is your mom still in New Mexico?
She is still in New Mexico. Yes. So she's been my biggest advocate and, my biggest cheerleader.
Cool.
She's doing great. She actually raises my 3 nieces. So my brother ended up passing away, obviously from the addiction, and she raises my 3 nieces, which they are doing amazing. And that's just our.
Whoa. How old are they?
So my oldest is 17, and the middle one is 15 and 13. So they're all teenagers now.
Yeah, that's okay. Woo, 3 teenage girls in the house. All right. Yeah, that's a challenge.
Yeah.
What did your mom remarry?
She did. So my stepdad, which he was really considered my father, obviously, like she met him when I was probably 15 years old. So, he didn't have any kids of his own, which is, he's amazing. And raised us, kind of adopted us, took us in under his wing and provided for us. So yeah, he was there as well.
Let me just set, let's, for the listeners, let's let that sink in for a minute. So he marries your mom. You and your brother at the time were teenagers. So first of all, taking on teenagers as stepchildren is a tough job. And then he gets you guys done there. And then they decide to adopt their grandchildren and raise them, and they're all teenagers. Woo, man. Yeah. Your mom's tough. Your mom's brave.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I get it from, is that woman is, nothing is going to beat her down. Like, she's been beaten down so much, and this woman just gets right back up and keeps fighting. So I think that's kind of where I get my fight in me.
Okay. Kudos to mom. What about your dad? Is your dad passed or where's he at?
So my dad passed, obviously he passed
Okay.
away about 5 years ago of his addiction.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, and I go back and forth every once in a while. I didn't really have a relationship with him at all.
Okay.
Didn't agree with obviously how he treated my mother. And so I did finally show up to his funeral when he did pass, just to give my peace to the family and whatnot. But you just never forget those memories, right?
Does it have an effect on you now as an adult with wine or alcohol or cannabis or any other recreational drugs? Are you super sensitive about that now? How did that shape you? I'm just curious.
Yeah. And how it shaped me. So friends or, colleagues that talk about it and kind of loosely, like, that sometimes gets me upset. I have a totally different I don't agree with it at all. And so,
Okay.
yeah, I do drink occasionally and whatnot, but as far as like the drugs go, like it really scares me, like
I
that's
would
just something
imagine.
that
Yes.
I have
Yes.
never, ever even touched in my life, because seeing what my brother went through and seeing what my father went through, I didn't ever want to touch it. So I was a scaredy cat when it came to like my friends, everybody, I'm sure, like when they're younger, you experiment with things. And I was always the one to, I'm not going to follow you. Like, I'm not a follower. I'm leading my own way. And, and I've just always been like that. I've always stayed away from it.
Very good. How did you meet your husband?
So funny story. So we're actually high school sweethearts. So, and he's actually so we met at 15 years old. I was going to St. Michael's High School in Santa Fe, and he was also going there. I
Same
didn't have
age?
same age. Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
I didn't have a whole lot of friends, I actually went from a public school to a Catholic school. So going there, I didn't really have a whole lot of friends, and he was kind of, loner and shy himself. And so for whatever reason, like we kind of gravitated to each other and we were like best friends. So, I think he pushed me, helped me along the way, and I pushed him out of his comfort zone because he was shy. I was a little more outgoing. So it really, together, we kind of created this thing, and hey, we have an amazing business together and been married for 18 years and together 25 years. So it just worked for us.
Wow. Congratulations. You guys don't look that old. I mean, damn, okay. You never broke up? Like there was never like, okay, this year you didn't have any like separations in there?
Oh yeah, we did. Had a couple of them, especially in college, right? Especially so when I graduated from high school, I told my mom, "Hey, I'm out. Like once I turn 18, I'm out of the house, right?" And she's like, "Well, what do you mean you're out of the house?" "Well, now you have to provide for yourself because no longer I'm going to provide for you." I said, "No
Right.
worries. I got this. I think that I have everything." And so I move in with him. And his mom is just like, "Oh my gosh, like this is not happening." She was not happy
Because
with
she's
us moving in
super
together.
strict
Oh
Catholic. Like
yes,
you're
yeah.
not okay.
She was actually a doctor, so she was an OBGYN in Santa Fe.
Okay.
And so he had, he was kind of born with a silver spoon in his mouth. So everything was
Sean, did you hear that? Sean, did you hear that, Sean? Okay, Sean, that's
yeah. And so, but she didn't agree with it at all. But we ended up moving in together.
okay.
Of course, you don't know what you don't know when you move in together. So had plenty of fights there. A couple of times we broke up, but at the end of the day, we kept coming back to get together. So
Good for you. Good for you. Any kids yet?
I have two. I have a 11-year-old boy and a 7-year-old girl.
Okay, very good. Not teenagers yet, but they're headed that way.
Exactly.
They're so awesome before they hit puberty. They're just great. Like from like 3 to 11, they're really awesome. And then after that, it starts getting weird.
Well, I don't know. So our son was like easy, like that kid, like is really smart. He's very disciplined. He's, an overachiever. And our daughter, she's just like me. She's kind of like this fiery little girl, and so every once in a while I'm like, oh my gosh, she's going to be just like me. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Awesome. Congratulations on your two beautiful children and being with Sean for so long. That's great.
Thank
Great
you.
story. Appreciate you sharing the personal stuff with me. Okay. So
Yeah,
did Sean, he didn't finish school, did he? He didn't go to
he
college.
did. He did. He actually, so he was actually going into engineering school. He was going to be a mechanical engineer at the University of New Mexico,
Okay.
and had straight A's. The guy had like 4 point whatever, grade point average. And then he decided, you know what, this real estate thing looks good too. I don't think I want to be an engineer. So he ended up actually going into business school. So he went into entrepreneurial studies. He actually did better in engineering than business because he never went to school. Don't tell him I told you that. But, no, but he did a lot better in engineering. But yeah, he got his entrepreneurial studies degree.
Okay, very good. By the way, what is Wolfswinkel? What's the origin of that?
It's Dutch.
Yes.
It's
Dutch. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious. Okay. All right. So you guys get this, you go to this boot camp. You somehow you have enough money to buy your first house that you're going to plan on flipping. Was it a plan like, okay, we're going to flip this?
Yeah. So let me tell you the story on that.
All
So
right.
we didn't have any money at all. We had a credit card. And so we actually, on our first house, we actually put a down payment on using our credit card, like a cash advance. And actually leading up to this boot camp. So when we went to the University of New Mexico, we went on what's called a lottery scholarship. So all you had to do is graduate from high school with a 2.5 degree in New Mexico, and then you can go to college, full ride scholarship.
What?
Right. And
Okay.
yeah. And
That's
so
awesome.
it was a no brainer. Like it would be stupid not to go to college.
Yes.
So
Yes.
Sean and I, that's what we did. We went to UNM on a full ride scholarship.
Nice.
Well, Sean's parents, he had actually set aside a college fund for him. And so he actually didn't use that college fund for college. So he had that saved in there. And he's like, you know what? There is the boot camp, you had to pay like $40,000 or something for the boot camp.
That's how the boot camp was $40,000.
Yes, and it had all these like boot camps in it, like a foreclosure boot camp, a wholesaler boot camp, a note boot camp, and we're like, you know what? Let's go all in. So he used his college fund for the boot camp, and his mom was not happy about that. Obviously.
Yeah, right.
So we spent all the money that we had on the boot camp. And then, once we bought our first property, we had our credit card to put that on, the down payment on.
Oh, wow. Now you've mentioned his mom a few times. Is his dad still around too?
Yes, dad's still around as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Wow. $40,000 for a boot camp. Okay. I didn't know. I mean, I knew about these boot camps, but I didn't know they were that expensive. Okay.
Oh, they're expensive.
Wow. All right. So you get the first house, and how long did it take you to flip it, and how much money did you make on that first one? I'm just curious.
So the first that we actually made $15,000 on the first one.
Total profit. Total profit on that
profit,
deal.
Yeah, just wholesaling. Yeah.
All right.
And that was at that time, that was a lot of money, right?
Where'd you get the cash to do the improvements? How'd you do that?
So we didn't do any improvements.
Oh.
We prehabbed it. So him and I went out there and we, painted a little bit and kind of cleaned it up to make it look good. And then we just sold it to another investor. So we didn't do anything to it, which is pretty amazing. At that point, we're like, holy cow, we just made $15,000 on this property. Like that was my addiction, I think, was that, right? It's like, we can do this again and we can do this again. So
now let me ask you, I'm thinking for a second. Okay. Now at that time you're living together. Were you married when you did the first flip?
No,
okay.
we were living together, not married.
Okay. So, but you had the cash for the boot camp, which you spent, you put the house on the credit card. How were you paying for food and rent? Otherwise, did you guys both have part-time jobs right there, or how did that work?
So I actually had two jobs. I was actually a server at TGI Friday. So I would actually go in from 6 to closing. Right.
Okay.
And then during the day I did some babysitting on the side, that kind of thing. But up until the point where we made enough money where I got rid of the babysitting job.
Okay.
And then I was just a server until we made more money where I can quit my job.
Now, right there, let's just take a pause for the listeners right there. Here is a good example of an entrepreneurial couple doing whatever they have to do to get this thing going. Joni's working 2 jobs. They're taking a major risk on putting the 40 grand in the boot camp. So they're taking huge risks. They're working their ass off. They're going over there, I don't know, at night or in the weekend, painting this house, thinking, holy shit, we just put this on our credit card. I hope this thing flips because we got to have to pay that credit card off.
Right.
Oh, wow. That is a good story because, and you're not married yet. So there's got to be a little bit of maybe sometimes at night, you're like, okay, is this going to work? Like, is this the guy for me? Is this going to, like, I mean, there's a bunch of risks right there.
Yeah. And, but growing up the way that I grew up, I had a ton of,
Okay.
My childhood was not the best. And I had, risks all the time with my brother and my father. So I don't know. For me, it was just like, I'm digging in this. I don't care. Like whatever happens, what could I lose at this point?
Yeah, you had nothing to lose, right? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's such a cool story. Okay, now jump us forward a little bit. I know it's a longer how you got it built up because you guys been doing this. How long have you had the business? 13 years?
25 years. So we've been
25 years. Was it called Real Property Management at first, or did you go through a couple of different branding moves there?
We've been through a couple of brandings. So when we were in New Mexico, it was called Mountain View Properties, obviously the mountains,
I see.
And then when we moved to Texas, that's when we called it Texas Turnkey Properties. And then our property management company, we bought a franchise, which is Real Property Management.
Oh, I see. It's a franchise. Why'd you move to Texas for the franchise purchase?
So going back a little bit. So part of the boot camps that we were all doing, we really, really loved the pre-foreclosure market. So basically in the pre-foreclosure market, this was back in probably like 2008 and 2009. Remember when the market was starting to change? And there's a lot of foreclosures during that time, right?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Sean and I actually got into pre-foreclosure investing. So we would, a nice young couple, we would knock on doors and help homeowners that were in foreclosure get out of their situation and help them. And we would purchase their houses. Right.
Now, how does that, okay. Can you give me the layman's terms? How does that work? What does that mean? Like you had a list, they're about to go into foreclosure and you just knock on the door and you're like, hey, I can help you.
Right. So that's basically what it is. Yeah. So we create in New Mexico, we created our own list. So we would go down to the courthouse once a week. We would see all the people that were on the foreclosure list. And, we would create a database for ourselves. And then that would be our database to, knock on their door and say, hey, Mr. Smith, I see that you're on the foreclosure list. I would like to come and help you out with your house. A lot of them didn't know how they were going to make the payments, and rather them having a foreclosure on their record, we would help them. We would purchase their houses for them. We'd give them some money so they can move on. And it was a win-win for both of us. So,
and then you'd flip it.
We would fix it up and then we'd flip it. Yes.
Wow. Did you ever knock on a door and somebody's like, hey, get the hell out of here?
Oh, yeah. Plenty of it. And that was actually like real life training. So fast forward, in New Mexico, it was a judicial process. So anytime a property goes up to foreclosure, it can take anywhere from 6 to 12 months to get auctioned off, right? Because you have to go through the judicial process. The judge has to award that. Where in Texas, it's a lot quicker. So the notice goes up at the courthouse, and then the following month, the property gets auctioned off. So it's a quicker process. Within 30 days, it gets auctioned off. And so we thought, Texas would be a great market for that, right? And so that's what led us to moving to Texas. So Sean and I sold everything that we had in New Mexico, and we moved to Texas just for that reason.
And when you moved to Texas, is that when you bought the franchise?
Not yet.
Okay.
So it kind of goes with it. So we're in Texas buying foreclosure houses, right? And
under what brand company right there?
Mountain View Properties still.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Yeah. All right. So you're doing that.
And so when we moved to Texas, the very first property that I bought here in Texas, the gentleman opens the door. And I'm coming up to him and say, hey, Mr. Smith, I'm here to help you out with your house. And the guy slams a door on my face. Or he's like, and then he opens it up. He's like, you have the audacity to knock on my door. And my face just froze. I was like, what do I do? So yeah, there was plenty of people that, but at the end of the day, like, the really good ones, we were able to help out in their situation, and we knocked on lots and lots and lots of doors. But it was,
and that
real
was
life
the
training.
that was the primary revenue driving activity, was getting those lists, knocking on the doors. That was your main revenue driver.
Yeah, that we did that for probably a good 10 to 12 years was pre-foreclosures. Right.
And on average, could you flip it just by buying it, or you always had to invest a little bit in it, like paint or carpet or whatever?
Yeah, at that point, you actually would do a rehab of,
Okay.
cosmetic rehab, paint, carpet,
Okay.
tile, make it look nice for a retail buyer to buy.
Okay. And of course, when
Right.
you moved to Texas, you had to find all new guys to do that stuff for you. You had to
All
find
new vendors. Yeah,
new vendors.
we
You
knew
had to-
nobody. Yeah. So
yeah.
it was a bit, but we did it.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm not a real estate expert by any means, but having great vendors, reliable people that like, hey man, this house needs a new roof, or hey, they need new carpet, or hey, the basement, I want to redo the basement on this one. Like having a team or a couple of vendors you can really depend on, that's critical, right?
Yeah, relationships like that. I mean, it is critical. I'll give you an example. So my rehab crew has been with us since we moved to Texas in 2005. They're still our rehab crew, right? We
Okay.
used to actually buy properties in Austin, Texas, and Shreveport, Louisiana. Our
Mhm.
guys would actually drive down to the city that we were buying in. They would live in the house and fix it up until we finished it. These same
Interesting.
guys.
Interesting. And you're still using the same outfit, huh?
Really using this. So, I mean, it's crucial. These vendors, if you need something, they're on top of it. So yeah, it's crucial to have relationships.
Okay. Now you're doing this, and then what happens? Walk me through.
So
How
then,
did you? Yeah.
Yeah, then, so right about 2008, 2009, I guess, that's when the market started to change, and I was getting ready to get pregnant, right? And so Sean and I were talking like, hey, like we can't be flipping houses for the rest of our lives. We gotta do something else, right? It was harder and harder if we put a house on the market, it was taking longer for it to sell retail. Inspections, going through the inspection process was just, a nightmare for new homeowners, that kind of thing. And so we had been approached by some investors that said, hey, like, if you have a property that you would help us fix up, then we could, rent it out. And then would you guys manage it for us? And so that's actually
residential or commercial?
Yes, okay. Residential. Right. And so that's kind of where the concept came up with turnkey investing. And so Sean and I were like, yeah, well, this could work. I mean, if we fixed up the property, we could sell it to an investor who wants to keep it as a rental, and then we can manage for that investor. And so we said, well, what's the worst that can happen, right? Because him and I are just like, we'll just dive into anything. We're like, what's the worst that can happen is that we have to hold it ourselves as a rental property, right? And so we did our first one and we sold it to an investor, and it worked out great. And so we created this property management company out of nowhere, just by the investors that we were selling the properties to, because they needed somebody to manage the investment for them.
So let me pause you right there. So the business model then is they're calling you saying, I want to invest in this property. And you're saying, okay, my vendors will fix it up, and you have your vendors fix it up, and you have a little markup in there, I'm sure, to make a little bit of money after you pay your vendors. And then they start paying you monthly to manage the property after that.
Correct. So once they close and buy the property, then they turn it over to us to manage it. So not only are we making a spread on the turnkey side of it, right, when we sell it to them, then we're also residual income on the property management side.
When you sell it to them, so you have to buy it first and fix it up and then sell it to them? Correct.
That and that's kind of was appealing to them, is because they didn't have to have any skin in the game, really. We had all the risk, because we were the ones that were buying it, fixing it up, and then we would sell it to them when it was already rehabbed and everything.
Did they find the properties and tell you which ones they wanted you to buy? Or
no, we found the properties. Yeah.
I see. Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. So now you got this business, it's rolling along. And now you're like, oh, we have a property management company.
Exactly. But we had no clue what we were doing on the property management side. I mean, we had the investment side of thing, but we had no clue what we were doing on the property management side. We were actually doing things on Excel spreadsheets
Yeah.
on, and it was a mess. And so we thought, okay, we need to do something, right? I didn't want to reinvent the wheel again. And so we looked into the real property management franchise. We're like, hey, this is, I think
Okay.
we really like the way they're set up, and they
Okay.
have all the systems, the processes, everything in place.
Systems. Oh,
So we can
I
just
see.
like plug and play, right?
I see. I
And
see.
so that's where we actually bought into the franchise model.
Okay. And how big are they? How many franchises do they have?
So they have about 350 franchises,
Okay.
nationwide.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, we've been in, I think, 11 years now. And now we have this really cool model where we sell turnkey properties. So we manage about 1,500 properties between two different markets.
1,500. What are the two markets? Houston and what else?
Houston, Texas, and Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Oh, so why'd you pick Albuquerque? Because you wanted
Well,
to
because that's kind of where our roots are, right? We
I
were
see,
born and
I
raised
see.
in New Mexico. And so we still knew that market pretty well. And so we thought, hey, let's, we have a lot of investors that want to diversify into different markets. So we want to have another market for them as well.
Okay. Now, you've been in it for 11 years, so it must be okay. Because, some franchises are better than others. But you guys were you were owners, right? You were entrepreneurs basically your whole life. And then all of a sudden you had to like answer to somebody a little bit. I mean, I know owning a franchise is still kind of like owning your own business, but they can still call and kind of tell you what to do, kind of. Like, how was that uncomfortable at first?
Actually, it wasn't at all, because it was actually a startup franchise. So it wasn't like they were down our throats or anything like that.
Okay.
So we actually are one of the flagship franchises. So we kind of led the path. So they would come to us for advice and whatnot when they would, restructure things. And so, yeah, it wasn't really, it was a startup. So it wasn't like that.
Did you call and tell them like, hey, since we're a flagship and I help you build this thing, then your cut is lowered now. I pay you less than all the rest of the franchise owners.
I wish. I wish it worked like that.
Do you and Sean have other LLC, you got
We do.
side
So
business going on?
we actually, we have 5, obviously we're serial entrepreneurs. So we have 5 businesses. We have, obviously our property management companies, our investment company, right?
Okay.
And then we have a plumbing company in Albuquerque, Mr. Reuter Plumbing of Albuquerque. And
Mr. Reuter. So it's a service. You don't use that. Do you use that LLC to service real property management or no?
Yeah, we do. They service our plumbing in Albuquerque. So
you're building your own vendors.
Yep. I'm building my own empire over here, right?
Okay, plumbing business. And do you want to call that out? Do you want to what's the URL for that?
Mr. Reuter Plumbing of Albuquerque.com.
Okay, they're very good. Another shout out for the LLCs. By the way, Riderflex now gets 10% of everything you earn from this point on since you were on the podcast. So I just want to make sure you knew that. What else you own? What else you got?
So the coolest part so the last one that I own is actually pretty awesome. So I own a virtual assistant company. And are you familiar with obviously you're probably familiar with virtual assistants.
Oh, yeah.
We also call them remote team members, right?
Okay.
And so one of the biggest reasons why we've been able to scale all of our companies is with the use of virtual assistants. So we have 30 virtual assistants that work in our companies, in every different company, all based out of Mexico.
Okay.
And so, we have been, it's been great. We've been able to, stay lean and be profitable, all that good stuff. And so we had other companies come to us and say, hey, we need you to help us, service we need to find VAs. And so we started a VA company out of Mexico. So that was pretty awesome.
Do all of your LLCs or S Corps, whatever, roll up into a parent organization, or you keep it separate? How are you doing that?
We keep it separate. Every entity is separate.
Okay. And do you and Sean have it split? Like, hey, you oversee this one, he oversees that one, or do you teamwork all of them, or how does that work?
Working together for that long, obviously we've been together for 25 years. So yeah, you have to find your role within the company, right? And so Sean leads the build to rent, our investment company. And then I run the property management and the virtual assistant company.
I see. And when he gets over in your business, are you like, hey man, you're in my area, you're in my space?
It used to be like that, but now we know, like, okay, you know better. I don't mess with your stuff and you don't mess with mine, but we do communicate. Obviously, we're partners in this together. So we still have a separate meeting where we communicate everything together.
What's your advice for couples working together as far as turning it off, so to speak, when you're at home and trying to, okay, like let's not talk about business 24/7. What's
Yeah,
your
good
advice
question.
there?
I mean, so, being a business owner, obviously you feel like you have to do everything yourself, right? And I didn't learn that. I learned that about 5 years ago that, hey, like in order to scale this thing, you need a team. And so now that I have my virtual assistants and the rest of my team handling it, we get off work at 5 every day. So we're home with the kids. When we get home, our phones go in the bowl, everything goes in the bowl. So we're not looking at our cell phones. We're not reading emails. We are 100% engaged in the kids, right? And weekends, we don't, work or anything like that, because again, it's our time. Like if I'm at work, I'm putting 100%, but if I'm at home, I'm putting in 100%. And that's for all couples that are, listening to this, is you have to separate it, because if not, it's going to drain you.
When you go to dinner with your husband, phones down when you're at a restaurant?
Yeah. Phones are down, no social media, anything like that. We're engaged in, the conversation. And that's how we've been able to do it.
Super important. Okay, that's a good segue into social media. So the reason you and I got connected is because I think you guys do a pretty good job with your social media, and I seen you popping up, and I see your stuff and the YouTube or the podcast, and I'm like, okay, what's going on here? I'm seeing Joni all over the place. I don't see Sean as much, but I've seen you pop up, and we're always looking for podcast guests, for Riderflex that want to share their cool entrepreneurial story. And so I kind of looked at your situation. I thought, okay, this is interesting. Let's get Joni on the phone. My point is, talk to us about your social media strategy for business and what you're doing, and maybe give some advice for the listeners. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I'm obviously not a social media expert, but what I found is that what I like to do best is provide value to my listeners out there. So whether they're, getting into real estate, whether they're getting into being an entrepreneur, or, just being a woman in business, whatever it is. So every day I try to make an effort of recording some kind of content for my listeners, right? And I use that as the social media to post in. And so my listeners can view that. So and then obviously I have the podcast as well, which I post on the different platforms. But my goal with all this is to provide as much value as I can out there.
And do you do daily posts just yourself, like daily tips or something like that? And where do those go?
Yeah, so I do actually do daily posts, and you'll like this. So my virtual assistant, which is my executive assistant, is the one that actually does the post on social media. So I don't manage it all at all. So she'll tell me, hey, Joni, I'm doing this. I'm like, great, it looks good. And then she, uploads it.
What's the is the daily post inside the Wolf's Den, or that's Joni, or how is that marketed?
Yeah. So my Instagram, which is Joni M. Wolf. And most of that is inspirational, motivational stuff throughout the day. And then I have my Facebook channel, which is Joni M. Wolfswinkel, which I post my podcast and video content that I shoot every day. And then,
why aren't you putting those on LinkedIn every day?
I do put it on LinkedIn as well. So it is on there, but it's only on my business pages on LinkedIn, obviously.
It's only on the business page. I see. It's not okay. Because I was going to say, I was looking at your personal LinkedIn page, and you're not posting there.
Yeah, I don't post as much on my personal page, but all of our business stuff is posted on there.
Okay, very good. So I think what I heard you say is social media can be great to market your business, but the key is to make sure you're providing value for the listeners so they can learn something.
Absolutely. It's got to be value. Yeah.
It has to be, right? I mean, I totally agree. Couldn't agree more. And I think that's a good lesson for anybody listening to this episode. Like if you're just posting shit to get likes because you want to spark a conversation on some hot topic. I mean, that's not really providing value. I mean, you want to give something to the listener they can learn from and give them a reason to return, right?
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on CEOs for companies going on social media and picking sides on hot political, social topics? And, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't get very political. So, anytime I see political stuff, I'm like, scroll, like I don't get into that mess because I know it upsets people. And so I kind of stay neutral is my advice.
Yeah, I personally think that's best when you own a business. Because first of all, you don't want to piss off your clients or your customers or your vendors or your employees, right? Because everybody's
entitled to an opinion, right? Whether it's right or wrong, you might not agree with it, but it does no good to, bash anybody and be vocal about it. And you can if you want, but I like to stay neutral.
Do you think your Instagram page drives some revenue? I'm sure it does.
It does, especially because we post a lot of like property management stuff, and property management is kind of local. So okay. I've kind of been the local expert in my industry here in Houston, with just with my Instagram posts, getting invited to speak on panels and speaking on stage, those kind of things. And so I think it really, really helps.
You spend a lot of time on it. You invest time on it. It's part of your revenue driving activities. Instagram's owned by Facebook. What are your thoughts on Facebook having the power to just turn off profiles anytime they want to in case you post something they don't like? What are your thoughts on that?
I kind of laugh because I have friends that, they say something and they're like, I got shut off or something, I'm like, well, I mean, you kind of did it to yourself. Like, I get it. Like they have to monitor them, right? Because they're also protecting themselves too. So, I mean, like I said, I'm neutral when it comes to that stuff.
Okay. Very good. Yeah. It's an interesting topic, right? They control so much information, right? Facebook and Google control so much information.
They do.
The power for them to the power of Google, who owns YouTube, to just turn off inside the wolf's den anytime they want, in case you say something they don't like. It's a little bit scary. It's a little bit scary. Make sure you don't say.
If it happened to me, I probably would be on the other and say, hey, like, that's not right. Right. But again, right. I'm very calculated also with what I say.
You strike me as being very calculated in almost everything you do.
Absolutely.
If, your people in your office, they probably, you would make me feel out of shape if I was around you every day. I would feel guilty every time I picked up a cheeseburger or something. I'd be like, okay, there's Joni. She's making me feel overweight right now.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, and part of what we do here, so anybody that works for me is wanting to improve their life at some point. Like we do a ton of self-improvement in my company. Cool. Like we read books together. We have a thing where it's we call it noon timers, where we teach investing classes, to our employees. We help our employees buy properties if they want to. So, if you work for me, that you want to improve your life. So, our team here is constantly leveling up.
So what I hear you saying is, if you go to work for you and Sean, and you're like a lazy person that didn't want to improve, you're probably not going to work there very long.
Exactly. And they're the ones that probably will quit because they feel uncomfortable because, we are here. We're just wanting to improve every part of our life, fitness, self-development, like reading books, all of that. We're here to improve.
Do you tell people in the interview, you say, hey, look, this is our culture. Let me tell you about our culture. You tell them.
When would they come in for an interview, we show them what, this is who we are. If you're uncomfortable with that,
it's probably not the place for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
How many employees you got?
So we have 50, but that includes with the virtual assistants. So I have about 30 virtual assistants, and then the rest are on-premise employees.
Okay. What's your favorite thing about being a business owner, and what do you dislike the most?
So my favorite thing is having, time to really do what I want. Like if I want to go on vacation, I can go on vacation, right? And I think what I dislike, and I think I've learned to like it, I love leading people. I hate the drama of HR and having to, fire people and all that headache, but I don't do it anymore. I had to do it at one point. Obviously, as a business owner, you've done everything, but that was my least favorite, is having to deal with that.
Now you have like a manager or something that handles the HR and terminations and all that.
Yeah, we have a whole HR department that does all of that. So, which is cool, because then I don't have to hear about it.
So funny. We're up to 24 recruiters now at Riderflex, and we have a VP of talent acquisition who oversees the contractors, right? And I'm just now we're at a point where I just say, Marcy, just take care of it. You're the one that can tell you, I don't have to do it anymore. You can call and tell them they don't work here anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. I can do it. I have, thick skin, but I don't like to do it.
Yeah. The people piece is, it's interesting about employees, right? I always say the most, inspirational part about being a company owner is the people that you have and the ability to change their lives and help them pay for a home and send their kids to school and give them a job. And that is a wonderful thing, but it's also the biggest pain in the ass when there's drama and all the rest of the stuff.
Absolutely. 100% correct. Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
So what's the plan for you guys? What are you gonna sell all this stuff someday? Are you just is it just a lifestyle business that's going to take you guys into your 60s, or what's the plan?
So Sean and I, obviously, you can see that we're pretty driven, right? In start up new companies. And so I don't know, I think we'll keep riding, and we have a great little thing going on here, and it works well. And I'm too young to retire. So, I have my own rental properties. And so I think that we're up to like 50 rental properties in our portfolio ourselves. So I think I'll continue to, maybe pay some of those off, and eventually that'll be my retirement. But for now, I think we're just going to keep riding it along.
I have two last questions for you, because we're almost out of time. But before I get to them, will you tell us a good nightmare rental story? Tell us, like, I don't know, a really quick one, like this crazy ass renter that was psycho, and I don't know, something. Give me something.
Psycho story. So let's see. Well, I'll tell you a hoarder story. So actually, I have a different one. Actually, it kind of leads into that though. So it was actually a lady that we bought a house from. She had like some illness or something, but she had no family member, nothing, right? And so she was living in the house by herself with no electric, no water, nothing. And this lady was a hoarder. You go into her house and it was piled up to like the ceiling of stuff. And so when I went out, I couldn't even get a vendor to go out there, because they were so scared that they would, there was a snake in there actually, but they were so afraid to even touch that thing. And so we probably had hired maybe like 3 or 4 different trash guys just to help her trash that thing out. By the end of it, we had like 5, those big, huge dumpsters. We had like 5 big dumpsters to trash that whole entire house out. Wow. This lady was sitting in the dumpster, picking stuff out of the dumpster. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I had to like tell her, hey, look, like, and it's hard because she's been living there, and these are her possessions, right? But to get her out of that situation was hard. And to see that house, it was so bad. Like, I have never been in such a bad house where, it just reeked and it was gross.
Wow. It is a sickness, I guess, right? I don't know if it's a hoarders, I mean, I guess it's a mental illness, right? I'm not an expert on it, so I don't know, but it is a sickness of some kind, right? Where they're afraid of they might need it or whatever the thing
Yeah.
is that you're tossing.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I bet you we could do a whole nother episode on crazy
Oh
renter
gosh,
stories.
there's tons of stories I can tell you. Every day is a story. There's something new every day in our industry.
What you have? I'm sure you've evicted people. There's been all kinds of stuff, I'm sure.
Oh yes, yeah. And in Texas too, like you have so if you evict a tenant, right, and you say you get awarded the eviction at the courthouse, and you actually have to hire a constable, get a writ of possession to get the tenants out. But literally the constable will get there and be like, all right, you have 5 hours to get your stuff out. If you don't get your stuff out in 5 hours, then our vendors are putting it on the curb. So I mean, it's
Have you there's
gotta
there's
love
probably,
Texas.
there's probably some emotional. Have you ever had a situation where the constable, do you go with the constable? Have you ever shown up and been there when this is going down or no?
Yeah, I've been
Okay.
there. Yep.
Have you ever had that situation and then like some lady opens the door and she's got like 3 little children and they're all malnourished and you're like, okay, I'm kicking this family out. And then you're having an emotional reaction about it. Has that happened?
So let me tell you a story. So I had during COVID, where eviction moratorium was going on, you couldn't evict tenants even if you tried, right? I mean, it was tough. And so something that my company did, and I led that, was we did a cash for keys. So basically we would, because I had tons of experience, negotiating and I mean, I knocked on pre-foreclosure doors for a decade, right? And so what I did was a different strategy, which a lot of property management companies wouldn't do, is I would actually go door to door knocking on these tenants' houses and be like, hey, look, like, I understand your situation and I understand it's not good for anybody, but at the end of the day, you're going to be evicted, right? And so rather than you having an eviction on your record and you having to go through this process and it's emotional and you having to get kicked out by a constable, all of that, why don't you let me help you out? And I will give you a portion of your security deposit. That way you can use that to go find something else. Wow. And so I did a lot of cash for keys during that time, which, I mean, tenants were happy because, hey, like we helped them out of their situation. Owners were happy because then we didn't have to go years without the tenants not making payments, right? Because time is money. As we can get in there, get the make ready completed and get it back on the market, then it's producing income again. And so I had a situation like that where I had a tenant where I did a cash for keys. I went in there and she said, yeah, Joni, let's go ahead and do it. I'll be out at noon. I come at noon and still nothing has moved. And so I'm like, hey, look, like you told me to come back at noon. And so
had you already given her the cash?
No, not yet, because that's the agreement. The agreement is that they have to broom sweep clean the property and it's got to be a totally vacant and hand over the keys before they get their money. Okay. And so I come back at noon. I'm like, this lady's not going to move. So I'm actually physically helping her pack her stuff, and, helping her box up her stuff and put it in the U-Haul. Took me hours and hours. And these kids, they're small children, had no clue what's going on. They're probably like 2, 5, and like 7 years old, putting their stuff in, trash bags. It was sad to see, but at the end of the day, like they got money out of it and they weren't evicted from the property. So yeah, you see a lot of that.
Well, it sounds like you're working hard to try and help people in that situation, which is great. So you're doing everything you can to help them, which is wonderful.
Right. And it's not ideal for anybody, right? But at the end of the day, it's what's best.
Understood. 2 final questions. I know we're almost out of time. If you could, well, let's see. What year did you graduate college? I know how old you are. I can just do the math, right? So how old are you? You can just, you got your year that you graduated.
I actually just celebrated my 41st birthday on the 8th.
Oh, wow.
International Women's Day. Yes.
Wow. All right. Congratulations. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
If you could call the 19-year-old and tell her anything now, based on what you've learned so far, what would you tell her?
What I would say is that no matter what background you've come from, no matter, where you're at in life, like push yourself to do what you want to do and be the best version of yourself, right? Because I think at the end of the day, us as women, we have challenges and where, we have to be the perfect mom and we can't go work out in the workforce and that kind of thing. And I think that, that's BS. Like you can do anything that you put your mind to, right? And that's kind of why I wrote my book. I wrote this book last year. It's one of my big aha moments, right? It's The Choice Is Yours, Balancing Success as a Wife, Mom, and Entrepreneur.
Can you hold it up to the camera? Can you give me a closer shot in the camera? Can you scoot up just a little bit or no?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Let me see.
That better?
Okay, the choice is yours. Okay, very good. Is it on Amazon?
Success as a wife, mom, and entrepreneur. So It shares a lot about my journey, where I've come and overcome and choices that I've made in life to get me to where I'm at today. So again, put yourself out there and don't let fear hold you back.
Is it on Amazon? Can you buy it on Amazon?
It is on Amazon. Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. And did you have a ghostwriter or you did it yourself? How'd you do it?
I did do it myself. Obviously I hired an editor to help me, kind of structure it. But yeah,
self-published.
Self-published.
Oh, congratulations! All right.
Thank you.
You got 2 kids, 5 businesses. You're writing a book. You're doing freaking bikini contests. I mean, I don't know. You are driven.
Again, it's all about balance, right? And I have an incredible team, so I couldn't do what I do right now without my team. So
congratulations, Joni, and to you and Sean and all your team members, your family. Awesome. Congrats on everything you're doing over there. Really, really cool stuff.
Thank you. Thank you.